If you're a Warriors fan, take a deep breath, because what's leaked now could be the heaviest news of the season. They're talking about Steve Kerr being fired. And the worst part isn't even that. It's the reason. It's the atmosphere inside. It's the locker room in chaos. I know the pain of seeing this team, which was once synonymous with control and confidence, turn into a whirlwind of doubts every week. And it seems like no one is telling the whole truth. So stay with me for 30 seconds. I'll explain to you what's really behind this leak, what this changes in the short term, and what is the most realistic path to saving the season before it ends for good. Before I show you the details of this leak and what it changes now, do the basics that help the channel a lot and put you ahead when the news breaks. Leave a like, subscribe, and activate the bell, because here I bring updates the minute it comes out and without fuss. And quickly comment, "I'm Warriors," so I know where you're watching from. I'm reading everything. Now the video doesn't leave because the next part is the most tense. What happened inside the locker room, who sided with who, and why this decision could be just the beginning. If you follow the Warriors closely, you know that there are days when news doesn't arrive as information, it arrives as a shock. And what began to circulate in the last few hours has exactly this weight. The possibility of a rupture involving Steve Kerr, the coach who for many people has become an inseparable part of the franchise's identity. Before anything else, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because this ensures that you receive updates when they appear. And, most importantly, it helps this content reach more fans who want to understand what is happening without noise and without exaggeration. Now let's talk calmly. Because the subject is big and the way it's being talked about, there's a lot of emotion mixed with speculation. The central point is simple and at the same time difficult to accept. There is a growing buzz in the NBA suggesting that internal tensions in the Golden State may have reached a breaking point. When an organization of this size begins to leak signs of discomfort, it is not usually for a single reason. It is usually the sum of small frictions that, over time, becomes a pressure that is impossible to ignore. What draws attention here is the size of the impact that a decision of this type would have. Steve Kerr is not just a coach who has been there. He symbolizes an entire period. Titles, a style of play that influenced the league, a way of leading that combined firmness and serenity. Therefore, when the hypothesis of a sudden change arises, the fans' natural reaction is shock, and I completely understand. Because it's not just about changing a name on the drawing board, it's about touching the heart of the project. And this is where the possible causes that are being highlighted come into play. Disagreements about strategic direction, squad management, vision of the future, and even day-to-day relationship issues. Think with me. A team that has already reached the top inevitably needs to deal with an uncomfortable question. How to remain relevant when the league changes, when the squad changes, when time weighs on decisions. There is a moment when what has worked for years begins to require adaptations. And not everyone sees these adaptations in the same way. Some of the conversations that appear in these rumors suggest that the front office may be evaluating that the team needs a change of direction, something that signals a new cycle with more intensity. Not because the past was bad, on the contrary, but because sometimes the memory of success also becomes a type of prison. You try to repeat the exact formula while the scenario outside has already changed, and the NBA changes fast. Changes in rhythm, changes in the way of defending, changes in the type of player who decides games, changes in what the market values, changes even in the way athletes deal with leadership. On the other hand, there is a human detail in all this that is almost always forgotten. Inside a locker room, what appears to the public is only the top layer. The real routine is made up of difficult conversations, demands, ego adjustments, minutes on the court, decisions about who closes the game, how to deal with injuries, how to balance veterans and young people. These are decisions that seem technical, but carry feeling. And when you have stars, promises, and a franchise pressured by enormous expectations, any disagreement can become a narrative dispute. The best for the team can mean different things to different people. And there's more. When we talk about minutes, physical management, and integration of young people, this affects everything. It affects the confidence of those who play little. It affects the patience of the veteran who feels his body charging. It affects the anxiety of young people who want space. It touches the urgency of those who are at their peak and want to compete now. If there is, in fact, friction at this point, it can grow silently for weeks or months until someone decides it's no longer possible to push. The fan notices this from afar, even without details. You see an interview and feel a shorter answer. You notice a different tone in a press conference. You see an exchange of looks on the court. You see a cryptic post and think, there's something here. And when the rumor explodes, the fans start to put everything together as if they were putting together a puzzle. That explains that rotation. That explains that decision. That explains that atmosphere. It's normal. It's the way we try to regain control when the news seems too big. But I want to make one thing clear. So far, what exists is an environment of speculation, a strong rumor circulating, and this requires caution. The NBA has an entire ecosystem that lives by anticipating movements, and often these anticipations mix facts, interpretations, and interests. At the same time, you can't pretend it's just any rumor, because the volume and type of conversation draws attention. When indications of a dramatic decision and breaking point appear, it usually indicates that there is some real discomfort, even if the outcome is not exactly what the title screams. If the scenario really moves towards a change, the consequences are enormous. First, within the franchise itself, how is the cast's reaction? Is there a feeling of loyalty? Is there frustration? Is there relief? Is there fear? A locker room can unite in the face of change, or it can split further, depending on how that change happens and how it is communicated. And communication, at this level, is everything. A decision can be technically defensible and still turn into an emotional disaster if handled poorly. Second, in the market, a possible availability of Steve Kerr would affect the entire league. Teams desperate for proven leadership would look immediately. At the same time, the Warriors would be held accountable for every detail. What is the plan? Who takes over? What is the vision? And here a real risk arises. When you change a figure that represents stability, you need to offer a very convincing narrative of the future, or the environment becomes a storm of doubts. And that's why the conversation about possible successors starts so early. Whenever the name of a coach of this size enters the center of the debate, lists, guesses, and desired profiles emerge. Some defend someone experienced with a strong voice, capable of commanding a cast with stars and daily pressure. Others defend a younger coach with fresh ideas, more aligned with current trends, with the courage to change concepts and accelerate a transition. And there is a third way, which many people underestimate, someone with above-average emotional balance, capable of managing vanities and expectations without turning the locker room into a permanent court. What is the ideal coach for Warriors in this context depends on the internal diagnosis. If the franchise believes that the problem is tactical, the search would be for innovation on the court. If you believe that the problem is one of culture and relationships, the priority becomes leadership and people management. If you believe it is a matter of cycle, perhaps the choice is someone who clearly represents a new era. And notice how this changes everything. You don't choose a technician just based on their resume. You choose what you want the franchise to be in 2, 3, 4 years. There is also the game style factor. Many people imagine a change to a faster pace, or to a more aggressive defense, or to a model that better preserves the health of the main players. Others imagine a complete reinvention, almost a cultural restart. But this is never simple because the Warriors are not just any team. There is legacy, there is identity, there is expectation. Any change is compared to the peak, and this comparison weighs like an anchor. And here comes the fans' pain, which is real. When a franchise gets used to winning, every sign of instability seems bigger than it is, because the reference is not being competitive. The reference is being dominant. So when behind-the-scenes rumors emerge, it feels like the ground is moving. And that is precisely why this moment, whether rumor or foreshadowing, needs to be observed carefully. It's not just internet drama. It's the type of subject that can influence confidence, performance, market decisions, and even the way players see their own future. If you ask me, what is the solution to all this? I will answer you directly: internal transparency and alignment. From the outside, we don't control the facts, but a solid organization faces turbulence with clarity. It defines who is in charge, defines the vision, defines the priorities, and ensures that the cast and committee understand the path. If there really is a difference in philosophy, it needs to be resolved so that the team does not become hostage to gossip and parallel narratives. When doubt dominates, performance drops. When the group feels coherence, the group responds. And there is a practical solution which many people ignore: time and consistency. If a change happens, fans want an immediate result, but the first objective should be to stabilize the environment. Rebuild trust. Take the locker room out of suspense mode and put it in work mode. Because the worst-case scenario is one in which the franchise tries to appear strong while inside everything is in doubt. This erodes decisions and turns any defeat into a crisis. Now, I also want to talk about a point that appears a lot in this type of rumor: the idea that a coach falls because he lost his squad. This can happen, yes, but it's not always that simple. Sometimes it's not lost, it's the environment has changed. Sometimes the group fragments because the pressure is too high. Sometimes the front office changes priorities. Sometimes the project changes direction, and the coach becomes a symbol of the past, even if it is a victorious past. And this is one of the hardest things about sport. Success does not guarantee stability, especially in the NBA, where each season rewrites hierarchies. What do I recommend to you, fan, at this moment? 2 things. First, observe the quality of the information. When a rumor is serious, it begins to gain consistent details: dates, decisions, official statements, reports from known sources. When it's just noise, it feeds on generic phrases and repetitions. Second, observe the team's signals: interviews, body language, front office posture, market movements. The group usually speaks, and if you've stayed with me this far, it's because you understand that this is no small news. So I want you to participate. In the comments, tell me what you believe is behind this rumor. Do you think it's pressure for results, disagreement about rotations and physical management, a clash of philosophy between commission and board, or simply the type of narrative that appears when a franchise is at a point of transition? I will read and respond, because the community's opinion helps to map the real feeling of the fans, not just what appears in the headlines. To close, I leave you with a reflection. The Warriors are too big to be defined by a single rumor, but they are also too important for us to treat signs of instability as if they were empty entertainment. If something is moving behind the scenes, how the franchise reacts will say a lot about the future, and that's exactly why I'll continue following each update with you, separating what's noise from what's direction. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like, because from now on, any detail can change the course of this story. And in the next part of our video, I want to get into the finer points: which on-court decisions and which roster choices tend to ignite this kind of tension, and why, when the locker room feels like there's a change coming, everything becomes more unpredictable, for better or for worse. And now, I want you to stop for a second and think about what this really means. When a rumor this big involves a name like Steve Kerr, it's not just another news story. It's a sign that something big may be moving behind the scenes. And the minute the franchise enters this kind of turmoil, every detail becomes a domino. An interview changes tone, a rotation changes without explanation, a player looks different on the court, and suddenly, the entire season can turn upside down. So, if you are true Warriors, you can't follow this halfway, you can't depend on social media, and you can't discover it too late when the world has already turned. Here we're going to move forward, update by update, without fuss, separating facts from noise, and bringing you what really matters so you understand what's happening with the team. So, do the following now. Go to the pinned comment and click on the Golden State Warriors News Today playlist, because that's where I'm putting everything together, in order, with each chapter of this story. Rumors, reactions, behind the scenes, possible names, impacts on the cast, and what changes in the next game and the future of the franchise. If you saw this video today, you need to see the next ones, because this soap opera doesn't end here. And when the bomb really goes off, whoever is on that playlist will be one step ahead. And I want you with me in this. Comment below what you think. Is this just pressure and speculation, or is there real fire behind this smoke? And leave a like and subscribe, because from now on, an update that changes everything could come out at any moment, and I'll bring it as soon as it happens.